Jai Gurudev. So we will start with the prayer and then we can talk.
Natirandasya jnana jana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha. He Krishna karuna sindhu dinabandhu jagatpate gopesha gopika kanta radha kanta namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna.
Thing where it all starts is prioritizing Guruji in our minds. And what that really means, because I think from the superficial level you can look at that and think it means just to think about him, right? Remember God, remember your Guru, remember God, remember your Guru, smarana bhakti. But the thing is that when I think of Guruji, it's more than just thinking about him as a person, his form, his name. When I think of him, I also think of everything he stands for. So it reminds me to be good. On a very simple level. It reminds me of his teachings. It reminds me of the things that he's been saying to me lately. And there's a saying in the Guru Gita from Lord Shiva where he says that remembrance of the Guru grants instant or spontaneous knowledge. And I've always sort of hung on to that idea that whenever I think of Guruji, immediately I get smarter. In whatever situation I'm in. I don't mean general information floods my mind. It's that my ability to deal with what's in front of me improves when I have him and everything he stands for at the forefront of my mind. And it's this funny thing that Christians used to do for a while. They always used to say, what would Jesus do? Right? So how should you behave? Well, what would Jesus do? And it's somewhat the same way with Guruji. And the way I want to introduce this idea is, think of the moments in your life when you're confronted with a desire. So a desire for happiness, a desire for companionship and friendship, a desire for ice cream. Doesn't really fit in my topic, but a desire for proximity, to avoid loneliness sometimes. Sometimes we're running away from something. For relief from our miseries, our difficulties, our challenges, our suffering, illness. There are so many things that occupy our minds. And the question I'm really posing is, what's the first thing that comes to our minds as the solution to those desires? So when I want to have fun, for example, what's the first thing that comes into my mind as the solution to my desire to have fun? Is it Guruji or something that is related to Guruji, given to me by Guruji, promoted by Guruji, or is it something else? When I'm feeling down and I want to solve that, what's the first thing that pops in my head? Ibuprofen? Paracetamol? Doctor? Food, drinking, movies? Or is it Guruji and something that he's given to me and something that he has offered up as a solution to these things? And I think when we speak on those levels, when we speak about mundane, everyday things that we encounter and the way we find solutions to those things inside of ourselves, it's really interesting when you analyze yourself, when you try to find out what are the first things that come up. Because we're all going to say, yeah, Guruji's options, they do come up, but do they come in first place or in fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh place? And from my experience, when you first start on this path, Guruji tends to be the first thing that comes up when you're talking about problems. if it's ego, or if it's heartbreak, or if it's loss or suffering, then yes, Guruji. Gurudev, please heal my broken heart. Guruji, why I lost that job. Guruji, all of this. Then yes, Guruji comes first. That's easier to do. But when it's, hey, let's go have some fun, it's rare that the person says, oh, do you know what? I want to have some fun. How about we go and do some group kriya? Oh. Huh? Woo! Let's go for a japa walk. I mean, it's great. It is fun. But that kind of requires a bit more training from my experience. Like, you need to sort of reprogram yourself to turn to those types of things for your fun. Now, there's a reason that when we do something like the Just Love Festival, it's really well attended, right? Because the fun is in your face. It's obvious. There's music, there's dancing, there's good food. Today, at least, there's good weather, right? And so everybody comes because, and you want to bring your friends. You want to bring new people because it's more obviously fun. When you come to a normal event, maybe the fun isn't as obvious. Maybe the benefit, maybe I'll change the word fun to benefit. Maybe the benefit isn't as obvious. And sometimes it comes through a lot of reflection that you really start to understand the benefit that these things have for you on this path, because it's not so immediate. It's not an immediate gratification. And that, for me, comes with the topic of maturity. I think about all of us and the ages that we have, right? We are generally from a relatively similar age group here on stage, but when you look at in the audience, you see people who are very young and you see people who are much older than us. And you see that we have very little in common sometimes. And on another level, we have very, very different life experiences, right? Some of us have accumulated way more than others. And we usually talk about maturity as something that comes post our teenage years, right? Maybe we have to live a little. Maybe after your 20s, when you're in your 30s, you can start to expect real maturity from people. But the question comes, how old are you spiritually? And I don't mean your soul, because there is no such thing as a young soul or an old soul. But what is your maturity level, spiritually speaking? And so you may have somebody that's 50 years old and has seen everything there is to see in this world, and they're very mature in worldly terms, but they're very new to this path. And so in dealing with the challenges of the ego and the mind and Guruji and everything that we work on in this path, they're like little children. They don't know how to deal with it. They're inexperienced, right? Immature. And you might have an 18-year-old that's been doing this all his life. So maybe in worldly matters, he's not the wisest, the most experienced. But when it comes to spirituality and ego and humility and all of these things, maybe they're very mature. And so the first thing that I think my mind goes to is, let's get rid of etc. B, I would say anything you've learned in the material world, set that aside for a minute. So if you think you know how to overcome your anger issues, oh yeah, I just go for a walk in the forest, that usually does away with it. Ignore all this, because now we're looking for purely spiritual solutions to all of those problems, coming specifically from Guruji. So everything you've done before kind of doesn't matter, if you follow me, right? The way you've managed yourself, so to speak, doesn't matter pre-Guruji. Because now, it's not just about, how can I put it? It's not just about managing yourself, it's about advancing yourself. Do you see the difference? It's not just coping. I know a lot of people that are experts at coping. They cope with their emotions. They cope with their anger. They cope with their loneliness. They cope with their desires.
Maybe give a synonym of cope for non-English
Coping means
speakers.
managing it, successfully sort of navigating it, surviving with it.
Survive.
Right? Surviving, maybe. But I'm not talking about survival. We're talking about advancement, yeah? Not how do I survive my life situation? How do I advance out of it to the highest possibilities? And that's very, very different. And so I really feel like I don't know if you guys would agree with me, but I really feel like the first thing you got to do is almost turn a clean page in your life when you join this path and you're with Guruji. Like the things you've done and the things you think you know about yourself have very little value pre-Guruji as they do post-Guruji. Whatever you learn from the moment Guruji comes into your life is exponentially more useful than anything you might have learned before then. Not for dealing with yourself, but for advancing yourself. So I'll just use one example. Because I was talking earlier about if you're feeling lonely or you want happiness or you want pleasure or whatever, how to prioritize Guruji in that sense. This is a training. This whole process is a process of development and training. I'll speak about my own personal experience. I've lived a life that was a good life, happy life, no problems fundamentally. I don't think there was any major problems in my life, really. But what I did do was I put a lot of habits inside my mind, a lot of tendencies that if I feel a certain way, this is what I have to do to match that desire, to satisfy that feeling. For example, if I want to feel fun or pleasure, let's go with the word pleasure, one of the things that I used to love doing was socializing with people. Why? Because I had a history in my life that when I would socialize with people in a very extroverted way, what would I get from people? Attention, praise, smiles, affection, etc., etc. And this would give me everything I needed to feel happy and fulfilled and special and loved and wanted and liked and appreciated. And I've cured the itch. Right? No problem. Now comes Guruji into the picture and Vaishnavism and our path. Big problem. That's no longer a viable option because everything that does to me, he's trying to undo. So Guruji is trying to humble me. He's trying to make me feel like I am just a servant of God, that God is what matters, and forget myself to some degree. And here I am trying to boost myself. So my mechanism for feeling joy is in amplifying my ego, whereas his solution for my joy is to diminish my ego. You see how it doesn't work anymore? I've got to discard this previous solution because it's completely unsuitable for my new direction in life. So prioritizing Guruji in my mind in that moment is I have to catch myself before I do what I used to do. I've got to stop and say, no, yes, this desire has come up. Yes, this feeling has come up. Don't chase it. Don't follow it because you know what road it takes you down. And that no longer serves your current purpose in life. And so remembering him, just his little face there with that smile, I recommend remembering always with a smile. Because in real life, the smile is rare enough, at least in your imagination, make the smile there. So I have the smiling Guruji right there, and then he comes with that big smile, and I go, yep, got it, Guruji. Don't chase the praise and the affection and all of that external stuff. What should I do to feel happy? I should fulfill my life purpose. Nothing truly makes me happier in here than fulfilling my life purpose. And what's my life purpose? To serve. Let me go do some seva instead of this. And then somebody says, yeah, but seva's not as fun, is it? But then here comes the point of maturity that I was making earlier. When you're a kid, you eat the pizza and the ice cream and the chocolate and the sweet and the fizzy drink, all one after the other. Why? Because it tastes good. And then afterwards, you pay the price for your lack of wisdom. You feel like you got a tummy ache, and now you don't feel good. And What does maturity tell you? Maybe stop after the first thing, right? Might not be as fun now, but it'll be better for you in the long run. It's the same attitude you have to develop with this. Yes, I'll do the seva instead of the party, extroverted, yeah, chit-chat with the people and feel great. And maybe it won't be as immediately fun. but it's going to do a lot more benefit to me and my path than the other one would have. It's a wiser investment, I would say. So this is just one small example, I guess, of how to understand the way we've been programmed to work and how that programming no longer serves us. And so we have to learn to catch ourselves before we let that autopilot take us down a road that we're very used to going, but no longer helps. One last little example. When people get angry. I see a lot of devotees, sometimes they still get angry because somebody was rude to them or they did something that they didn't like. It's like, you know this one, you know what they did? Blah, 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 blah. I'm really angry now. And you think, well, maybe that's a behavior that made sense back when everybody was fighting for their space and individuality was the key, etc., etc. But in this path, what's that anger doing for you? Is it helping bring the Sangha together? Is it pleasing Guruji? Is it helping you transcend your mind? No, 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 no. So, yeah, you've got to change who you are. Yes, you have to change your behaviors. Yes, you have to change the way you think. Why? Because now you're prioritizing Guruji. You're no longer prioritizing your ego. So it really changes who you are as a person completely when you change the priority in your life. I'll leave it there for now. But I think prioritizing Guruji in your mind is scary because of how much it changes you as a human being.
Yeah, and before giving it to either Aniruddha or Mayuran, what I wanted to say is that years ago I was listening to your lecture and you said something that stuck in my mind. And this brings 2 points. The first one is that probably when you come to the path, the way you can change your routines or habits is through knowledge. So for sure you have to get to know what Guruji would do. And the more you get to know what Guruji would do and you get this knowledge and wisdom, as Swami Revatikaanta was saying, then you can do what you were saying in that lecture, that I cannot trust my discrimination. And what I should do, I rent Guruji's discrimination. You used to say that, and that's really stick with my mind. I can't trust my mind, but I can trust Guruji's instructions. So what I do is, my discrimination is not working. I rent his discrimination. I take his discrimination and I follow what he says to do until that discrimination becomes my discrimination. And when his discrimination matches my discrimination, whatever I'm actually doing is what he says to do because I train my mind in that way. And that's what was coming up to me while you were talking. Or maybe Swami Aniruddha once.
Well, when you said prioritizing in the mind, to my mind comes that when we have these moments, as we all want to be happy, or as we all want pleasure, when we are not feeling so great, we tend, what does the Charama Shloka says, Mam ekam sharanam vraja. What does that mean? You tell me, what does it mean? Mam ekam sharanam vraja? Anybody? Some people are Googling it right now. Well, I see you, most of you sitting here with the tilak, so I guess you know what it means, or I hope to know. I hope that you know what it means.
You just don't know the line itself, you know the overall meaning. Yeah.
They know, they're just humble.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway.
They're prioritizing your
meaning that
microphone.
He's your only refuge place. Krishna is your only refuge place. Guruji is your only refuge place. In the sadhus have a saying that the only doctor is Narayana and the only medicine is Gangajal, the water of Ganges. So it doesn't mean that when you get sick you should drink a lot of Ganges water. It will probably purify you a lot.
Don't do it.
Yeah, but there is this saying. So when we feel unwell, then I know a lot. As the whole spiritual world and the esoteric world is filled with different options from astrology and tarot and this healing and that healing, which I'm not saying they are not good and they don't have their place, but if they become a higher priority, then our taking refuge in Guruji and in the path in God, then I think we have a slight problem, because God and Guruji is our refuge place, and sometimes we have to go through certain things for good or less good. It's just part of our purification process. So that comes to my mind when you say prioritizing Guruji in our mind in the first place. Which doesn't mean that we can't use other methods, but they shouldn't become the first solution. The first solution should be Guruji, our taking refuge, and then when something comes our path, take it, but keep Guruji as the first refuge place.
Mayuran?
So I think when we say prioritizing, that's just a soft, diluted, fluffy covering for surrender. If you really think about it, it's a just love cover. When you open the cover, oh, it's surrender again. It's that, I think that's what's really going on. But surrender has this idea of perfection. I must be perfect. Prioritizing means, are we able to choose Guruji in every situation? Are we able to pick him in every situation? And I think so many devotees have come across this experience. Like, for example, my brother's told this many times, but my brother Anshul, Guruji asked him when he asked him to move to Germany. That was an Adesh, a position where he had to gamble everything. He had to put aside his own vision of his family, his own vision of his career, his own vision of wealth and prosperity in England, and he had to gamble everything and choose Guruji. And then when Guruji asked him and said, so when are you moving? And then Anshul, he'd phoned me the day before, a few days before, and said, you know what, Mayuran, I can't do this. This is too much. This is unreasonable, right? You can't just ask me to just lift my wife, my kids, and just move to Germany. This is like, he was venting, because it was starting to really like, the walls were closing in. And then he already decided, no, I'm just going to tell him I can't do it. And so then when Guruji asked him that time, so when are you moving to Germany? He said, Guruji, somewhat embarrassed and, feeling inadequate. He said, Guruji, no, I can't do this. And Guruji went, okay, fair enough, you don't trust. And then that arrow hit. I don't trust. And then Anshul just said to me, he said, look, I have to decide at some point whether I'm a devotee or not. And if I'm a devotee, I have to choose Guruji. Simple as that. I have to put it all aside. You mentioned Charama Sloka, Sarva Dharman Parijaya. Abandon everything, then Mamekam Sharanamaja. Then I go to you alone. Go to me alone, Krishna says. Right? And so he had to make that decision. I have to abandon everything, just clear the table and say, there's only one card on the table, it's Guruji. That's what prioritizing Guruji really means. And that situation can come up in multiple ways, right? Sometimes he might say, get initiated. And for some people, that's huge. Whether it's devotee or brahmachari, whatever it is. For other people, he might say, I want you to get married to this person. Right? And you think, wow, I don't have much in common with this person. And you have to gamble. And this is the thing, this risky you've got to be able to put all your chips on the table and just say, I'm going to choose Guruji. But why you would choose Guruji is two ways you would choose Guruji. Either you love him so much and you always have to choose Guruji because you just think, I just can't imagine my life not putting him first. Right? Krishna says this verse, Param Drishtva Nivartate, which means when you see something higher, everything else collapses. Yeah? Even if you have attraction for the world or you have your desires, if you see Guruji, it collapses. Like you can choose one of Anup's grilled burgers, dripping with grease, great sauce, really healthy, and you're eating it, but if Guruji comes, suddenly the taste of Anup's burger goes away. Right? You see Guruji instead. Right? That's what Param Drishtva Nivartate means, that you're able, when you see Guruji, everything else collapses. So that's one way. The other way is when you look at your life and you think, I'm going to die, right? Sorry to be so positive, but like, I'm going to die. Death becomes this reality. Life is short. The world is temporary. All these kind of great truths start to hit your heart. And then you look at Guruji and think, he is the only solution to this madness of living in this world. Either you come up with Guruji with extreme love, or you come up with him with extreme wisdom. Both ways is fine, but either way, you end up choosing Guruji. And you realize that the salvation of your soul is in his hands. So to choose Guruji, you've got to have this immense clarity of why on earth you are here, what is going on. And when you have that clarity, you are able to choose him. Like when he asked me to write this book, The Hypocrite Within, and people would say, oh, Mayuran, you know, you're married and you had all these responsibilities. How do you write this book? Actually, it's not that difficult. But the motivation was, he said to me, he gave me an Ardesh. And when that Ardesh comes out of his mouth and says, Mayuran, I want you to write this book, I honestly felt like if I don't write this book, the salvation of my soul is in the balance. Right? It seems like an exaggerated response, but that's what I feel when he gives a direct instruction. I want you to do this, and when you choose that, when you're able to fulfill that Ardesh, you jump into a whole new level of relationship with him. When you're able to gamble everything and choose him, you jump into a whole new realm with Guruji. And if you don't choose him, then you feel the pinch. You feel like maybe my path is stagnating. Maybe it's not going in the right direction. And blessed are those devotees who Guruji gives them an opportunity to gamble. The mind is terrified of gambling, right? We're going to lose everything. But we have to see that as a huge blessing, because what Guruji is saying is, if you can fulfill this Ardesh, you will jump into another relationship with me. So that is a form of blessing where he gives you that choice of the world or him. So that's what I think, prioritizing Guruji at the root of it.
Well, here I was being all festival compatible, and then Mayuran comes and says, it's really about surrender, you're all gonna die, make the right choice, right? So now I feel like I'm obliged to go a little bit deeper.
So I'm not a motivational speaker, so don't come to me. I don't deal in motivation. I just deal in these hardcore truths.
So I'm gonna just make a small addition.
Small.
Very, very motivational also. Look, it's like this. When the biggest case of prioritizing Guruji I ever did in my life, and this is something that I want to share with you just so that you can understand that it may start one way and it becomes another way after. There was an important point in my life where I had trusted myself to make several important decisions in my life, and I made the wrong decisions. And so I went to Guruji quite disappointed in myself, knocking on his door, asking for his help. And I felt in the moment that he answered the door that he wanted to see even more clarity from me, that the reason why I was in that position in that moment was because my mind had misled me. It wasn't bad luck, it wasn't circumstantial, it was my mind has misled me because it is not trustworthy. And as soon as I fully accepted that fact, and I said to him, Guruji, I want you to initiate me as a brahmachari, his immediate response was, why? Give me a good reason. And I told him, I'm not going to tell you it's because I love the idea of being a brahmachari. It's a lie. I'm not going to tell you it's because I'm feeling so much love for you and God pouring out of my heart right now. That would be a second lie. It's because I don't trust my mind. And I'm tired of having it be in control. So I'm offering you I'm requesting you to take charge of my life. I don't want to be in charge of my life. I don't trust myself. I would rather prioritize your instructions over mine. Now, if that's a good enough reason to be initiated, I would love to get initiated. If it's not, what to do? And he said, it's a great reason to get initiated. Let's go. Let's go. Now we went and got initiated. Now from that moment on, was that the only reason today that I can sit here and say, I'm still initiated just because I don't trust my mind? No, that's not true. It may have started that way. It may have started with just the recognition that my mind makes mistakes that I wish it wouldn't. That my mind, as well-intended as it is, makes mistakes due to the ignorance and lack of control over the circumstances around it that it just simply doesn't have. And as I trusted him, and as I followed him and gambled and did all of these things that Mayuran was talking about, he took me down a path where the motivation for everything I do now, and I wake up, it's just to serve him. It's just love, because I love him. Simple. Why do you do what you do? Because I love him. Oh, is it because you don't trust your mind? I don't care what's in my mind, if I'm being perfectly honest with you these days. It feels very unimportant what goes on in here. Because what goes on in here, way more important. But huge transition. That was not where it started for me. So you don't have to be perfect, overflowing with love and full of surrender and say, Guruji, I want to get initiated like some Disney fairy tale. Actually, the words I said to him that night was, Guruji, because I would like to punch my own mind in the face. Can I get initiated, please? Not very romantic. But look at me now. Right.
Okay, so in this section of the prioritization of Gurujis in the mind, of course the mind is part of us. I have a mind, as they have a mind, and all of you have a mind. But the mind is interacting with different things in our life, and the mind is interacting with us, and that was this angle that we took with Swami Revatikaanta. But now Mayuran will talk a little bit about the interaction of the mind, of the interaction that we have with the mind and with ourselves in the household, and now you can prioritize Guruji in the household.
Yeah. So you're talking about grahasta marriage.
Don't be too happy though, that face looks...
Do you want the politically correct answer, or do you want the truth? Which one do you want?
We're on blood.
Do you want the fluffy answer?
Cut the recording.
Okay, I'll give you the fluffy answer first, right? So this. If I wanted to slightly deceive you, I would give you this answer. So this answer, the fluffy, politically correct answer is, do you know what? When you get married, have a spiritual marriage, it's wonderful. You have a terrific romance. You know, you get to go on wonderful family holidays by the beach, and it's just a joyous occasion every single day. And then you get to go to Guruji, you bow down, you put on your tilak, and you say to him, I want to surrender. And then you go back home, and then you continue on your tremendous romance and this perfect family situation. And that is the spiritual marriage, right?
Thank you.
Raising nice devotees, Vaishnavas.
It's little Vaishnavas and their devotees and, you know, whatever. And, you know, and you do puja together, and it's so wonderful. And
does anybody believe him?
So that's the politically correct answer, right?
You lied.
The real answer, right? To cut to the chase. The real answer is that your heart only has one seat. It only has one seat. Your heart can only have one person sitting on that seat. If I have my wife sitting in that seat, Guruji is not sitting in that seat. If I sometimes have my wife sitting on that seat when we're in a great place and then and then sometimes I will come and see Guruji, and then he says something nice to me, and I put Guruji there, and then I come back home, then I put my wife there. So I play musical chairs with my heart, that seat in my heart. Then, again, I am not putting Guruji. If you're playing musical chairs with your heart, Guruji is not sitting in your heart. So, Grihastha life, spiritual marriage, comes with that absolute clarity of my heart only has one seat and Guruji is sitting on there. Not my wife, and if you're Mataji, not your husband. Tough, right? Maybe, maybe not. But that is a spiritual marriage. When I look at my wife, it's not all fireworks and wonderful and like, oh my God, violin, Bollywood dreams and all this kind of stuff. My main priority with my wife is to make sure I do as much as I can to serve her to come to Guruji. Right? That is my number one priority. That has to be the priority above all other priorities. When I raise my children, that also has to be, I have to raise them to become devotees, first and foremost, that devotee identity, putting the right things in their head. That is my first and foremost priority, not for them to fulfill my great ideas, or sometimes what we do as fathers, we can try and make our children live through our children. So we want them to achieve things that we didn't achieve, right? That's another thing that we can do. And I talked about this in Navaratri as well. When I first met my wife, Guruji put us together in 2006 in January. Still remember the date. So romantic. But I had independently told Guruji that I liked my wife. My wife independently told Guruji that she liked me. And and then Guruji just came up out of the Hale Clinic, you remember that place? And we were walking through London, and he had Firuza on one arm, and he had me on the other arm, and we were walking down the streets of London, and he kept saying to me, "You talk to her." And I was like embarrassed because it's the first time he's all out in the open and all this kind of stuff. Very romantic, yes? But as I said before in Navaratri, look at what's happening there. Who's in between us? Who's in between us? Guruji's in between us, right? And that is the key thing that everyone has to understand about a spiritual marriage versus a normal marriage in the world. Guruji sits between us. And if I'm a devotee that has Guruji sitting in my heart as the number one thing, and my wife has that Guruji sitting in her heart as the number one thing, fantastic. We have the right understanding. We both are clear. Guruji is number one priority. Everything is about serving him. If you don't have the right understanding, if one of you has that understanding and the other one doesn't, that's tension. That's tension, right? Maybe some of you might know about this, whatever, but if one person is saying Guruji, 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 the other person is saying my wife, or my husband, and Guruji as well, there's guaranteed to be tension. Guaranteed to be tension. Because the spiritual path is what, ultimately? It is moving away from the material, going to the spiritual, dropping what is in the world, and rising to what is in Vaikuntha, right? A normal material marriage is not about that at all. It's not about that at all. And so if we both don't have this understanding of putting Guruji first, enormous tension builds up. There is constant anxiety and insecurity. What is my partner doing? Does he love me? Maybe I'm not number one priority. All this kind of stuff starts happening. So to be in a spiritual marriage is to have that absolute clarity. I remember when I was going to propose to Firuza, we went to see Guruji in Mauritius. I bought this wonderful diamond ring. Wasn't that big, really, but
But it was
Wonderful.
It was wonderful.
it was a little bit like this sort of...
It was okay.
This not so, but it was shining at least.
The intention matters. No?
Yeah.
It's the
It's
intention
all
that
about
matters, Mayuran.
intention.
Yeah, so I wanted to get Guruji to bless this ring, and I thought he would just like go touch it and say, yeah, fine, you can use that ring. He looked at it, and then he looked at the ring, and then he put it on his own finger. And then he started looking at it. Oh, it's really nice. It's really nice. And I thought that was so significant. I thought that was so significant when he put it on his own finger. And then he gave it back to me. And then he said, yes, use this ring. But he put it on his own finger. He was basically saying, you're marrying me, right? That's the point. We are all marrying Guruji first. Then we go into marriage elsewhere in other things. So that is something that I think that is really, really important. And I would say that to be in a spiritual marriage, if you have this right understanding, then there is tremendous support. It is like sadhu sangha. You are having satsang with somebody who understands and is constantly pushing you, supporting you, driving you forward on your path. People sometimes say, as I said before, Myron, oh, you do this, you do this seva, you do that seva. How do you do it? I do it because my wife understands that Guruji wants me to do certain things, and so she takes care of other things. If she didn't have that understanding, then there'll be constant tension. Why should I look after the kids? You know? Why don't you do your fair share? Why don't you do this? You're always on your laptop writing about this, blah, 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 grabbing a microphone, shouting to people on a stage, you know. Seva starts at home, you know. All of these things, and they're very reasonable arguments, right? So that understanding is very, very important. I would also say, as a final point, is being a grihasta, you have to understand. How many of you have ashrams in your country? Yeah? Some, hopefully more to come. To support Guruji's mission is a primary duty of a grihasta. You know, the sannyasis, swamis, brahmacharis, you know, they give up their life and serve exclusively. But to support the ashrams, to be that person that will rescue the situation if the ashram is failing in some way, to organize your life, your routine, your children around the ashram or Guruji's mission, organization, that is a number one priority. Being a grihasta is a life of service. The prescription is the same, whether you're a swami, rishi, brahmachari, or a grihasta. You have to serve, you have to surrender, you have to make Guruji a priority. If you are lucky enough to be in the world, maybe you work, you have some money, whatever it is, or you have some time, a primary duty of a grihasta is to step forth and be that Hanuman, right? When Lakshman is dying on the battlefield, Hanuman is the one that comes and gets that Sanjeevani herb. He brings the whole mountain. A grihasta has to be that kind of person that says, you know what, I'm going to take it upon myself and I'm going to step in and rescue the situation. That should be the instinct inside a grihasta as well. So I'll leave it to the other swamis to talk about marriage and things like that.
Thank you.
Well, I can only say whenever I'm visiting my blood family or anybody and there's the whole family coming together, I'm always very, very grateful because they confirm my life decision.
Thank you. Swami Revatikaanta, please.
Please, Akash, please, you first.
No, I mean, I can apply what Swami Revatikaanta was talking about earlier. I can just say what Guruji says. And what I remember Guruji saying about this is what Mayuran says, it's amazing. But also when Guruji says when you get sick, your wife or your husband, they cannot be sick for you. They cannot take the medicine for you. They cannot die for you. They cannot do that because it's you first. And I guess one of the steps to be able to prioritize Guruji is to prioritize yourself. You have to come, and then you're able to say, my priority, it's him, together with somebody else. And then you can prioritize that in a household, because at the end of the day, you're going to die, and you're the one alive.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, after everything I said, it doesn't mean that you become this rigid yogi figure who said, you know what, I heard the satsang and Just Love Festival, I'm detached. You know, my wife, she can just go over there, kids can go over there, I've got to do my puja, this is a spiritual marriage, not a worldly marriage, you know, so I'm going to be really rigid like that. That's not what this is about, right? We shouldn't take it to the other extreme. It comes back to what I said earlier, param drishtva nivartate. Can you choose Guruji? And it comes back to, if you're choosing Guruji, he becomes the overwhelming sole motivation for why you do anything. You still are with your family. You still enjoy being with your family. You still even have attachments to your family, right? So I'm not proposing that, certainly me, I'm perfectly detached from my children and my wife. Not at all. I'm not proposing that. So I don't want to sort of sponsor a misunderstanding of rigid detachment. The attachment will naturally be there. If you have wife and kids, it will naturally be there. But there comes a point where you should be able to choose Guruji over that attachment. So that is the main thing I want to just home. It's an important point that we don't get carried away to extremes.
On that, I just want to share something what a devotee who was actually a very hardcore Kriya yogi in all different kinds of traditions. And whenever he did his spiritual practice, he did it by himself, detached from family, from children, whatever. He said the first time he came to Guruji and he spoke with Guruji and told him about his life, Guruji just looked at him and said, "Where's your family?" And he said, "They are at home." And Guruji said, "No, bring them." So he said Guruji was the first master he met who immediately said, "Bring your family. Do not separate your spiritual endeavor from your material duties and your family life." And I thought that was very beautiful, fitting to what you just said.
Just one quick experience I shared in France just earlier. One time a devotee got married, and they had Guruji's number, so they were messaging Guruji here and there, and they got married, and they went on their honeymoon and had a wonderful time by the beach and whatever, blah blah blah. And then I told Guruji, oh, you know, they're there, they're having a great time, and he said, "Why didn't they send me a picture?" He said, "What? He didn't send me any picture?" And it was interesting that that Guruji had asked that question, because this person who I spoke to afterwards, their inclination was that Guruji's over there and my worldly life is over here. And so there was a kind of, perhaps even a slight guilt that I'm enjoying something outside of Guruji. And Guruji was proposing the solution. What is the solution to enjoying things outside of Guruji? Bring Guruji into it. So if you're going to go to the beach, fantastic, but take a selfie and send it to Guruji, right?
Very applicable to all of you.
Yeah.
Very applicable. Thank you, Mayuran.
Yeah.
You should write a book about what to do when you go to the beach.
Krishna Arpan, right? You offer it.
Offer it with your intention, not with Telegram or WhatsApp or anything like this. Just with your heart, like this.
Mentally send
Krishna
the
Arpan,
picture to
Swaha.
Guruji.
Okay. Unless you are this very specific example of a very specific person with a very specific relationship with Guruji. Thank you.
That was a subtitle.
I'm glad you guys are here to clarify.
Just one small thought before we move on to the next thing. I had 2 conversations with Guruji about this topic, despite not being a married man. One of them, he said this: the key to a good spiritual marriage is to understand that the relationship is based on cooperation and not on dependency. If you depend on the other, you're in huge trouble. If your happiness depends on the other one, if your fulfillment depends on the other one, if your feelings of love and happiness depend on your partner being there with you, for you, etc., you're in huge trouble. And you can't have these thoughts. It has to be this thought of we are cooperating on this path. I help him, she helps me. I support him, she supports me. But I am my own person, and so is she. Our path is individual, and there's no other way of looking at this, right? The second thing was about the musical chairs comment you made. I had a very nice conversation with Guruji one time. He turned to me and he said, "Who do you have in your heart, Revati?" And I said, "You." He says, "I know. Who else?" So I started naming some people, and he said, too many people. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I'm very jealous." Jealous? I don't want to share. When have you ever seen me sharing a chair with somebody, sharing a bed with somebody? No. The heart is mine or not mine? I said, "It's yours." "Then I don't want anybody else in here. I'm too big to share with somebody else." And then he tapped his belly and he said, "You see, I'm fat. That's for a reason." Now, this was way before Guruji is now not fat and incredibly fit. But this was a few years ago, this conversation. No message, no conclusion to that, just sharing a conversation.
Thank you for the sharing. So now that we've seen how you prioritize Guruji in the mind and you prioritize Guruji in your household, we can see how Swami Aniruddha wants to bring prioritizing Guruji with the devotees.
Well, yeah, as both of them have said already, especially Mayuran, the musical chair, or how it's called, yeah, your Krishna says in the Gita, "I'm seated in your heart." No? He is our eternal companion. Guruji is seated in our heart. And prioritizing Guruji in the devotee, for me, starts obviously prioritizing Guruji in yourself, because you are devotee. You have sometimes ups and downs, you have struggles. Sometimes you like yourself, sometimes you dislike yourself, sometimes you judge yourself, sometimes you're suffering, sometimes this. All those situations we all share, no? The ups and downs of a human life. If we remember that Guruji is seated in our heart, if we remember the love that Guruji has for us, then we wouldn't be bothered about that, because the main questions are and will always be, who am I? Why am I here? And as devotees, we have that very clear. We are devotees, we are this eternal Atman, we are the eternal servants. He is seated within ourselves, he loves us. Like there's this beautiful saying from Mother Mary of Medjugorje, which says, "If you knew how much I love you, you would cry out of joy." It gives me just an idea. Guruji, he loves all of us. You go for darshan, we go for darshan, he sees everything. He sees all our impurities and everything. Does he judge us? No, he doesn't judge us. He just throws all his love on us. He overwhelms us with his love. That's why we are here, right? Because he awakened something inside of us. In all these years, so many times, I have seen my limitations and judged myself. And I always thought, if I judge myself, he must judge myself. He must judge me. But he actually never judged me. He points out the limitation, but the main point is always, I am seated in there. I love you. Guruji loves you. That's why if we remember the love of God, if we remember the love of Guruji, then we can truly live a fulfilled life. And then, once you see that love, once you love yourself, then a very wise person once said, love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? And that is what it means to prioritize Guruji in the devotees. There's so many sanghas all over the world. And again, we have sometimes maybe in the mind, if we are in a sangha, if we are in Bhakti Marga, everything must be just love and flowers and beautiful. Yeah, you come maybe to the ashram and you think, oh, it's so great here. Everybody's always smiling, joyful. That's when you come for the weekend. Yeah? Because, okay, Just Love Festival is an exception. But everybody who stayed in an ashram for more time sees that that is not the only reality. Because part of the path is that he brings out all the impurities, like gold, when it gets purified, it goes through fire, the impurities come out. Like in the Samudra Manthan, when the churning of the ocean happens, the first thing which comes out when you go on the spiritual path is what? The poison. All your impurities, all your anger, your greed, your envy, all those qualities, they come out. Like in a family. This just becomes a big family. Bhakti Marga is a worldwide family. And now your poison comes out, and maybe from your fellow devotee the poison comes out, and poison meets. And then we have big... It's not like maths. Minus and minus makes plus. No, it just makes a big minus. Yeah? And we can see that everywhere. You all have experienced it, where people in the Sangha, they fight with each other, they dislike maybe each other or some people. And that is when we forget to prioritize Guruji, who is seated in the heart. What do we have in common? Who am I? Who is that person? I love Guruji. You love Guruji. I do my utmost best to serve him. I know you do your utmost best to serve him. You have your limitation, like I have my limitation. You have your conditionings. And if we start to accept that everybody is in their process, but in the essence, in that seat, in that one seat, there's only Guruji, and that is what we have in common, then we can actually start to support each other, support the devotees in growing in that love for God and overcoming our weaknesses. And I see that Guruji wants that so much. I often shared the story here in the ashram. I was in charge for different departments like facility, garden, kitchen, many years back. There was one Prabhu, which, I'm not sure, maybe I keep it without names, yeah? Names and numbers, yeah, because I once said the name and the next day the person came to me and said, bro, people say you told I'm Krishna. I'm like, I already gave away probably who it is, but never mind. So there's one person given in my department, and he just did everything to show me I do not respect you, I do not work for you, I do not listen to what you're saying, I'm just going to make your life hell. Everything. I tried really everything. In the good methods, the bad methods. I seeked consultation from professionals, whatever. How can I deal with this? Because I don't know. And he was just, everything I did, everything I tried, he was showing me, I'm gonna disrespect you. I'm gonna show you that I'm not working with you. So I kept on making a list, and I went to Guruji, and I had this little long face, and I waited till Guruji,
Little long face?
Little long face means yes. You get it. My long face. Anyway. So Guruji said, what's wrong? And I said, nothing. And he said, come on. I said, nothing. It's actually nice, you know, you get attention when somebody keeps on asking you. So he kept on asking, what's wrong? What's wrong? At some point I thought, now he really wants to know. He really wants to know what's wrong. So I tried in a detached way to say, you know, that person, he does that and he does that. And I do not care, but it's very bad for the ashram, very bad for Bhakti Marga, very bad for me, like very neutral, giving the points. When I finished with the list, he just looked at me and said, like, with a big smile, one day you will understand that it is Krishna in the form of that person who tries to teach you something. And I was like, yeah, thank you. So that doesn't mean that we become Krishna, like that Prabhu afterwards came to me and said, everybody is saying, I'm Krishna. No, you're not Krishna. But obviously, the things which come up, they're all designed by him. In the end, what he wants us is that we look what we have to learn, what you have to learn. Prioritize Guruji in ourselves, in the other one. See that it is Guruji who acts through the other one. As weird it might seem. There's another devotee who came, Guruji picked up from India, he brought him here. We met in India already. And when I met that devotee, we just didn't like each other. It was a mutual agreement that we didn't like each other. So he came to Shipitinilaya, and Swami Revatikaanta always says I'm a very bad liar. So I couldn't really hide my dislike for that person.
The worst liar I've ever met in my life.
Thank you.
It's a compliment.
So every time he was also invited for lunch and dinner. So we were sitting at the same table, and I just couldn't see the person, just couldn't smell the person. It was.
You smell the person.
Well, that's a way of saying.
You smell people. My God, Revatikaanta. Jesus, you smell.
Anyway, Guruji again saw my dislike towards that person, and after some time he said, "What's wrong?" And I told him that I really. Yeah, well, I started...
What's wrong? Nothing.
Nothing, obviously. I tried again to get the attention. That's a common thing. Doesn't really work. Don't try it. Doesn't work. But in the end, he said, like... I asked him, what can I do? Because I wanted to change that. You know how it is when you have a fight with somebody, when you have a grudge with somebody. It is not a nice feeling. If you can't love people, if you're not... feeling good with other people around you, it is not, you're harming yourself, no? So I wanted really to have a good relationship, but I just didn't know how to do it. So I said to Guruji said, like, what's wrong? And I said, I just don't like that person. What should I do? And Guruji said, love him. Learn to love him. If you can't love a brother who is also on this path with you, if you can't love somebody who is with me like you are in this path, how do you think that you will be able to love the whole world? And in that moment I understood Bhakti Marga is bigger than I myself or anybody of us. It is about this universal love which Guruji is. And how we can attain that love is by just remembering constantly. He is seated in our heart, prioritizing him in our heart, in the hearts of others. Beyond everything what you can see in the outside, he is that seat which is seated. That's why we chant normally the mantra, Vancha kalpatarupyascha kripasindupya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. You all know the mantra, right? I hope. What is a Vaishnava? He's like the Kalpa Vriksha, he's the wish-fulfilling tree. He's like Kripa Sindhu, he's like the ocean of mercy. He has mercy and compassion for all the other people, understanding for other people. A true devotee can actually help to uplift other people. So when we prioritize Guruji in our heart and in the heart of others, then we truly uplift ourselves and the others.
I'll share one final thought. We have to end. We're already running over time. I'll share one last thing that Guruji told me about this, just so that you can have some clarity of the advice that Swami Aniruddha just gave you about loving everyone. He once said to me, because he told me the same thing, that I also should love everybody. I'm working on it. He told me, when I questioned him about this, something that I think you should hear, and that was, listen, Devotee, there's a huge difference between loving everybody and liking everybody. I love all of you. I love you more than you all know. That doesn't mean I like all of your behaviors, and I like how you conduct yourself and what you're doing and what you're saying, etc., etc. But loving is something deeper than liking. So if you don't like somebody, learn to love them. You might still not like them, but you can love them at the same time. Those things are compatible. It took me a while to understand that until I felt it. I met somebody that I didn't like, but I loved. And then you know the difference. So think a little bit about that also, where the platform of loving really comes from that recognition of something much deeper, and realize that what you don't like is something much more superficial. And when you can understand the difference between those two things, the whole thing becomes easier to do. Jai Gurudev.
Mayuran, you can also... No, we have 4 minutes where we can conclusive thought.
The only thing I would add to Swami Aniruddha, Swami Revatikaanta, is that Guruji has many murtis. The murti of the Mauritian man with long hair and a beautiful smile, that is one murti. Your Ishtadev is another murti of Guruji. And the Sangha is another murti of Guruji. And that's how we have to view the Sangha. You know, in the Ramayana, when Rama goes to capture the deer, the golden deer, right? He runs off. Lakshmana is left guarding Sita. And then Sita is so distressed, she utters terrible abuses at Lakshmana because she wants him to go and find Rama, because she hears this Sita Lakshmana call in the forest. And so she abuses Lakshmana and says to him, you go away, go and find Rama. What are you doing just staying here with me? And then when Lakshmana goes away, that is when Sita becomes vulnerable. So my point is, Lakshmana is the Sangha. If we divorce ourselves from the Sangha, if we start to retreat into our own hole, in our own cave, and say, do you know what? Sangha, there's too many difficult characters there. I'm just going to go within. Guruji's in my heart after all, right? If that happens, I would say, I tell you from experience with Guruji for a number of years, is that is one of the first symptoms of a very, very slippery slope into a dangerous situation. Do not ever divorce yourself from the Sangha. Make as much effort as you can to be around devotees. The devotees are a murti of Guruji. Even if, as they said, we don't like people and the tendencies are so bad, understand that vibration they carry is still Guruji, and it is a lifeline to Guruji's heart. The Sangha is a lifeline to Guruji's heart. So never ever think about divorcing yourself from that.
Thank you. And I just want to say in conclusion, we had another topic that was prioritizing Guruji's love. That fits perfectly. Was the angle I wanted to bring, but we're out of time. But it's not a problem, because it's the culmination of everything that we spoke today. In my opinion, is you need to be able, in order to prioritize Guruji's love, to be established in that love, to actually feel that you are loved. And unless you do the prioritization in the mind that Swami Revatikaanta was talking about, and that we said, unless you change your discrimination, and you decide to put first what he says and use his techniques and practices and ways to get better, and you see Guruji in all the devotees, in the Sangha, you see that he's in all the people, and that at the end it's always him and Krishna that is trying to teach you something, and that the decisions in your life, whether you want to become a monk or whether you want to have a wife or a husband and you have a household, in that household you keep seeing Guruji, because everything that connects you with everything that you do, think and feel, it's Guruji. When you're established in that, you are prioritizing Guruji's love. And I believe that in that prioritization of Guruji's love is the moment where you will think, feel, and decide to stop just thinking, feeling, and wanting to receive, but you make a switch. And I believe prioritizing Guruji's love means act outside, serve, love what he wants you to love, people, devotees, techniques, deities, and everything that surrounds you. So thank you very much for listening to all of us. And MC. Oh, we just do Om Shanti Shanti so that we conclude.
Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. प्रेम से बोलो सतगुरुदेव स्वामी विश्वानंद महाप्रभु की जय, समस्त भक्त मंडली की जय, जस्ट लव फेस्टिवल की जय।